welcome. I see some participants are already waiting, so we're going to kind of get started here. Welcome, happy Friday. This is the Leadership for Change, Moving from Ideas to Action webinar series. As you are logging in, if you could type into the chat box, we'd love for you to tell us where you're coming from, where you're logging in from, and just make sure, I wanted to mention when you're in the chat box to make sure that it is sending out to not only all panelists, but all panelists and attendees. You can click the down arrow and you should see those options there. So make sure you're sending it to all panelists and attendees. So we have someone from Garden City, Kansas. Hello, Stephanie. Jen from Tucson. And Susan from Lafayette, hello.
Rochester, New York. Yeah.
Excellent.
Hopefully you're warm.
Cool. California, Colorado.
Okay. Welcome, everyone.
It's also really super helpful if you type in your role, whatever it is that you do in your work. It helps us kind of tailor our comments a little bit. So feel free to type that in as well. Just again, it just helps us think about who we're speaking with and to. Okay, so a CCNR specialist, infant toddler specialist, great. Library, wonderful.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'm going to get started with some introductions. My name is Meredith Burks. I'm the Product Marketing and Customer Experience Manager at Red Leaf Press. This is the Leadership for Change, Moving from Ideas to Action webinar series. And it's presented by Fiona Stewart, Cassandra O'Neill, and Monica Brinkerhoff. Fortunately, Cassandra couldn't be with us today, but we are very excited to have Fiona, who is the Program Director of the Child Care Alliance of Los Angeles, a network of child care resource and referral and alternative payment agencies across the county, and she oversees several county-wide collaborative programs. And Monica Brinkerhoff, the Organization and Employee Development Director of Child Parent Centers Incorporated, the Head Start grantee for Southeastern Arizona. This series is kind of built off of their books. So Fiona is the author of Building Together, and Cassandra and Monica co-wrote 5 Elements of Collective Leadership for Early Childhood Professionals. And I would just like to take a quick moment to say, if you have not read these 2 books, they are excellent. The 5 Elements of Collective Leadership talks about it being a system of shared decision-making and transparency and involving all the people affected by change in its process. It just goes a little bit more in-depth than the webinar series, and Building Together, Fiona really explores the leadership skills and styles and competencies necessary to address today's challenges in the early childhood field. And so I would just want to put in a little plug for both books. And this is our 3rd. If you have not participated in the other 2, that is totally fine. We welcome you today. They are available on our website. And just a quick note, the next 2 will be in the new year. So our schedule is up there, and I'm gonna just pass it right over to Fiona. So, thank you.
Great, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, I guess, depending on what part of the country you're in. And we're gonna spend a couple slides here just reviewing a little bit from the previous webinars that we've done, and sort of the core themes that are anchoring this webinar series is this model that you see here on this screen of really focusing on, and leadership is starting sort of with that circle in the beginning of yourself. and your own leadership values and aspirations and goals and skills, and then broadening out from there into the circles of the teams that you work with and within, and partnering with the organizations that you work with, and then also your community. And then on the next slide. So in the guiding series, the guiding question for this series has really been, what's the relationship between leadership and change? And as we've talked about in the previous webinars, leadership is always about sort of forward motion and change and progress. And so we really wanted to spend a lot of this webinar series in different ways exploring that relationship, about how leadership is always in some way working towards change, working towards a different reality than you have today. And in the first webinar series, or the first webinar of the series, I should say, on the next slide, we reviewed our leadership beliefs and values and aspirations, where we see ourselves today and where we'd like to be heading in the future. And we talked a lot about how leadership is not about position or title. It's really about you and your goals and your state of mind and your way of approaching your work. And that it's about being optimistic and aspirational, and really, again, that idea of sort of working for change and moving towards a new future. And that leadership is an active and dynamic state. It's really about taking some new steps within your own work, within your teams, within your organizations. And that collective and collaborative leadership is about working with others. That leadership is generally not about doing something alone by oneself in some corner, but that it's really working with others to move towards a place of change and growth. And that working collaboratively is always transformational. Things will not be the same in the future as they are today if you're really working together with others to do things in new ways. And then in our second webinar, we talked about some of the neuroscience around some of this idea of being aspirational and working towards change and taking risks. And we talked about the red brain and the green brain, which we'll talk a little bit about again today. And then sort of that work of how do you override the negativity bias? How do you really sort of overcome that sort of negative talk and negative thinking and really take risks and move towards change and stay curious and stay aspirational and stay optimistic, and approach that all from a place of joy and excitement and encouragement, and kind of moving it into that kind of way of working. And then today, we're going to cover these goals of working, again, towards inviting others to share thoughts and ideas and aspirations from a place of curiosity, and then reviewing ways to receive others' ideas so that they feel honored. So really starting to take this sort of team approach, and then brainstorming how to engage your team no matter what your role is. So we'll jump in from there. So the idea of curiosity, our first thought is really that if you're going to be listening to others and working with others in a team, you have to be curious, right, about who they are and what their strengths are and what they bring. So as Maurice Sykes said, a knowledgeable leader is not someone who's all-knowing, rather he or she is someone who's all-seeking. So this idea of always looking for more information, new ideas, and being curious about that. And that includes others' ideas and others' strengths and what they bring to the team. So it's really important to stay curious about that. People are more likely to share and feel open and supported if they believe that leaders are genuinely interested in what they have to say, right? I mean, we all can feel that if someone is really listening and really interested in what we're saying, or nearly not so much. So as a leader, it's really important to sort of model that, be curious, stay open to others' ideas and thoughts, and be genuine about that too. I mean, I think people know if that's coming from a place of authenticity or not. And then the next slide. It's also really important for leaders to be willing to take risks. I think when working in a team, I also try to think of not asking anybody to do something that I'm not willing myself to do. I try to model putting myself out there, right? So if I want to encourage people to share ideas, I try to share ideas. I try to take risks and put ideas out there, even if I think, what are people going to think of these ideas? I jump in and do it anyway. So you can sort of model to people, it's okay to do that. It's okay to share our ideas and throw them out there. I also try to model sometimes sitting back and listening and letting other people share their ideas and modeling that as well, that sometimes it's okay to listen and really be interested in what others have to say and what they have to share. Because building connections makes it feel like a safe space, right? And then modeling that is okay. So another thing you can do is those icebreaker kind of activities, right? That help get people's ideas going, show that it's a safe space to do that, show that it's okay to be curious and take risks. And it can help build that connection to really get ideas rolling and make people feel like it's okay. So the other thing to think about is power in all of this. You know, power is always going to be part of this work, right? I think we're back on the slide before, Meredith. Other way. There we go. There we go. Yeah, that's the one. So power is going to be a part of teamwork, right? If you're going to bring a group of people together, there's always going to be some power dynamics or power imbalances. The thing about that is that it's okay, and to expect that. They're always there, right? There's always some kind of power dynamics because every person comes with themselves and their own personal power. So one way to think of this is to just acknowledge it. It's kind of like acknowledging that there's that elephant in the room, right? That there might be some power imbalances, there might be some power dynamics, but acknowledging them and understanding that those are there and even kind of embracing those will keep people sharing, right? It opens the space up rather than try to shut it down. So try to find ways to level the playing field so that everybody has a voice. That'll help kind of balance some of those power dynamics out. One way you see that sometimes happen in teamwork is setting ground rules or having other kinds of safeguards so that all opinions and ideas are valued and honored and everybody feels like they can share. Because everybody does come with his or her own personal power, and that's a strength to build on. So see that as a positive thing. Because as it says here, the goal is to establish a culture of trust, inclusiveness, and respect, where all have the ability to tap into their own personal power. And when this type of supportive environment and inclusiveness is established, then members will feel empowered to contribute. So that's really the goal of trying to build a team sort of approach. Now on the next slide, it's going to take a little bit of trust possibly, right, to do that work as well. That's going to be essential, is to build trust with folks. Because with trust, again, people will be willing to share, contribute in a team, feel like they're a part of that work, and they'll work towards common goals, and they'll be willing to take risks. So let's spend a couple minutes thinking about what can we do to model or to start to build trust within the teams that we're working in and that we're providing some leadership to. So let's take a few minutes and type into the chat box, and we'll see what kinds of ideas we can all share with each other. So I've got Susan saying, let others get to know you and show interest in others. Great. Yep. Yeah, again, it's sort of that taking risks, right, and modeling that to other people so that they can see you're willing to let people get to know you too, right? Having all staff contribute to the agenda. Oh, that's a great idea. Absolutely. So that everybody's ideas are part of it from the beginning, even part of setting the agenda. That's a great idea.
Look, it's some sharing stories and remembering stories and returning those back and being a good listener. I see even the sharing this physical space where it's just sort of a natural part of the physical environment being close is that you're sharing experiences, being vulnerable and human, and being accepting, consistent one-on-one meetings, absolutely.
Somebody says we have an activity of sharing our gifts of our head, heart, and hands and build on everyone's gifts. Huh, that's great. Sharing gifts, that's a nice way to put it.
Modeled in everything you do.
Yeah, somebody wrote again about scheduling meetings, agendas as a team,
Mm-hmm.
really getting people's input from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Someone also wrote about caring about folks, which I think, again, that gets back to that really a place of authenticity, really genuinely caring, showing people that you do.
Yeah, Jen just offered that. She's been in our webinars before and offered that idea of the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace to really help deepen your understanding of the people that you work with and what they prefer. That's great. That's a good suggestion. Mm-hmm. Gratitude practices.
Absolutely. They're great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go on to the next slide, and we'll talk about a couple of ideas that we wanted to just share with you as well. One was to be transparent, and which I think that's even with the agenda setting ideas and other ideas that people have come up with. You know, from the beginning, there shouldn't be surprises or mysteries or secrets to this work. Really be transparent in everything. Talk about it. Share your ideas. Share what's on the agenda. You know, share what things are going to be working on. Set goals together and be transparent in that work. People will begin to build trust if they really know what's going on. Act with integrity. You know, somebody talked about being vulnerable. Again, it's that sort of modeling those kinds of values and letting people see that. Be dependable. That's always a good one for building trust. People want to be able to count on you, right? So it's important to be dependable. If you say this meeting's going to happen, or we're going to work on these things, or I'm going to go work on those things, you know, make sure to do those and keep your promises and come through with things. And listen, which was one that came up a lot in the comments. Definitely listening and actively listening, really caring, and be open. Be open to people's ideas, their interests, their values, their goals. Maintaining confidence and honoring people's values. All really important for building trust. Someone wrote here in the chat, treat them how we want them to treat the children. Exactly. You know, you want to model that sort of place of integrity and really valuing people and treating them as you would want to be treated, or as you would want them to be treating the parents or the children in the programs that you work in. Oh, great ideas, everyone. Okay, I think we'll turn it over to Monica.
Yeah. So we've talked about trust, we've talked about power. So we're going to switch a little bit and talk about how do you help people around you feel honored. So first, this is a great moment to hear from you about what you already know. So what are some things you already know about how to receive other people's ideas so that they feel honored? So what are some things maybe you do or you know about in terms of making people's ideas feel honored and valued? So let's take a second. We'll just type that into the chat, and just a reminder to make sure you're selecting all panelists and attendees. And then as Meredith typed in, that allows us to kind of learn from each other. So I'll just pause here for a moment. So you already know. Okay, good. Jen, thanks. We put ideas on a flip chart so everybody can see them. Asking for suggestion. Ooh, good one. This is a great idea. Highlight a contribution in a newsletter or an e-blast. Good. What else? I think someone earlier said just at meetings, offering a gratitude or appreciation. So that's another great strategy. Anything else?
Yeah, writing people's ideas down, tracking them in some way so that they, I mean, sometimes even just the seeing them up on the flip chart, like someone said, it makes them know that, okay, you really took my idea seriously. You honored it. You wrote it down. There it is for everybody to see, and it's kind of recorded for all time. You know, that's a great suggestion.
There's a lot of comments coming in about feedback and asking for feedback and input, and then using it, and then thanking people for providing it. So that's great. Yeah, just idea discussion boards, you know, shared project boards, shared documents and folders. Offering notes, noticing specifics, and highlighting. Yeah, go ahead.
Someone wrote, acknowledge the source of the ideas. I think that's really
Nice.
Critical. That's a great thing to say. I know
Yeah.
I've definitely sat in meetings where people have taken credit for something that wasn't originally their idea. And especially if the other person's sitting in the room, it doesn't go down so well. So really acknowledging, hey, you know, so-and-so had this great idea last time we met. You know, I want to bring that up again. I really have been thinking about that idea. You know, just honor other people's ideas. You know, it really shows that you are open and willing to that, and willing to share the, you know, the credit and the honor for the work that you're all doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Giving credit to people when it's due. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So we've talked about this last time, but we've got the red brain and green brain here. We just like to remember that that the neuroscience is at play when we talk about any kind of interaction among people. We're always, you know, we bring our human bodies with us and our brain chemistry with us. And so when we're thinking about helping people on our team feel engaged and feel appreciated and feel honored, all of that creates the, you know, emotional safety for people to be creative, to be willing to share their ideas. Someone said earlier about, you know, made the note about expressing or showing your own vulnerability. And when you think about in the past, when you had to share an idea or offer a suggestion, it does take a certain amount of vulnerability. You're taking, as Fiona talked about earlier, you're taking a certain amount of risk. So when you can remember that there are things that you can do to help people around you stay in their green brain and stay out of their red brain, it can be really helpful in facilitating people to be able to share their ideas, contribute to meetings, and work collaboratively. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so there's some things that you can do to help people stay in a green brain. So one idea is when you're, you know, brainstorming ideas, keep those two things separate in a meeting. So you can say, okay, first we're gonna just brainstorm and get all the ideas on the table. It's kind of an open idea sharing right now. We're just gonna be as creative as we can. And then the second part of that, then later you take time to evaluate the ideas. What sometimes will happen in a meeting, you might have seen this before, is somebody will, you know, will say, okay, let's hear the ideas, and someone will bravely raise their hand and share something, and then someone else will say, oh, we've already tried that before, and that immediately can, you know, shut down the ideas and shut down the creativity. So keeping those two things different and separate, the brainstorming and generating separate from the evaluation, can sometimes help. I think too, doing like strategies that we use a lot is even simple things like turn and talk or think, pair, share, so that letting pairs of people generate ideas together first, feels a little bit more emotionally safe in that venue, and then allowing for the whole group to share out gets people warmed up, and they're usually a little bit more likely to talk to a smaller group of people versus a large meeting. So I see not shutting down ideas because someone wasn't successful before. Yeah. And so, you know, we had a call yesterday and just kind of, you know, talking about today's webinar. We were saying, you know, even if you think about the way that you respond as a facilitator, as a leader to an idea, where instead of saying, oh, we tried that and it didn't work before, you can say, well, that's a great idea. Let's see if we can, you know, there was this thing happened in the past, and this is what happened. So let's think about how we might make it different this time so we can try it again. You know, using tentative language, saying, so, you know, if you're offering ideas and suggestions, saying something like, so one idea is ... and then what are some other ideas and options? Remembering to also take time to align your beliefs with those of the people around you. So we like to use the sentence starter of yes and instead of but, or no but. And so, you know, even those kind of simple words you can use like yes and, they help people's brain to kind of think about that there's still some openness and possibility. So, all right, let's go to the next slide. And we're just gonna let you, again, take a minute to think about what are some ideas you have about engaging your team. So anything you can think of, engaging your team. Praise, yeah. Might have been maybe even things we've talked about so far. I think some of the other ideas that have been offered previously on some of those earlier chats were, you know, appreciating people's gifts and talents, giving them notes to recognize things they've done. Yeah, Jen, giving them time ahead of time, giving them time to think things through before jumping in through a group. Yep. So, you know, so sending out topics and minutes before so that people can kind of have time to think. Sharing like an aha moment that they've had. That's great. Nice reflection. Different team building activities. Yeah, making people feel connected. When we feel connected, we're a lot more willing to be engaged, recognizing the things you see in the moment as good opportunities for reinforcing what we want to see. Absolutely. So catch them. It's a lot like practice in the classroom with children. You know, catch them doing the things that you want to see. Let's see. Yep. So thanking people for their suggestions and encouraging them to contribute to in the future also. Nice. A spotlight of the week on weekly emails that's open for everyone to contribute to. That's a great idea. Very practical.
Someone had written earlier too about giving some time and waiting for people to have time to kind of respond, which I think is important. Not everybody jumps in right away, and sometimes creating that space for people who have to think in their heads for a minute or maybe hesitant, you know, to speak out loud, giving them the time and the space to do that. I know there's those some of us who come and talk a lot, so sometimes encouraging people to sit back and really giving everybody a chance to just share, to throw out their ideas.
Yeah, I love that. It goes right along with what you were talking about earlier related to listening. And there's a quote about, you know, if you're listening, then you have the capacity to learn. And if you're talking, you're just saying what you know. So it's a really nice kind of quote to keep in mind. And, you know, in some meetings, people will even have like a time, like a pause time before anyone can respond, just to give everybody time to think before the meeting moves on. Let's see, some other ideas coming in: peer mentoring, having consistent things on an agenda and then opening it up, recognizing people for being honest, and positive acknowledgement. These are great ideas. So, you know, one of the things we always like to remember and remind people is that all of you on the calls bring a lot of knowledge and ideas and expertise. So we always like to give time to surface that. And then it really deepens the conversation and enriches the content that we bring. So, okay, so let's move to the next slide. So really, you know, if you think about engaging your team, it involves 3 key things. It's keeping track and holding your own aspirations and vision in mind. And then also being aware of the aspirations and the visions that other people hold. And then finally, keeping in mind the aspirations and visions that you all hold together as a group, as a whole. And so, you know, this is just really thinking about what is your shared purpose together, and do people have opportunities to think about why they feel connected to your shared purpose or your vision? Do they have opportunities to contribute meaningfully to that shared purpose and vision? And, you know, there's a lot of research that shows that the more people have opportunities to participate and feel connected and feel like they're needed and necessary, the more engaged they are, and it really helps with motivation. So it's a great thing to keep in mind. I feel like it's just a reinforcing positive cycle. So next slide. Okay, so now we're just going to take a minute to try to get some different perspectives around this whole idea of engaging team members. So first, we're going to really think of it from the perspective of a supervisor or manager. So if you are a supervisor or manager, what are some things that you do to help develop a shared aspirations and high engagement? And then if you're not a supervisor, what are some things that a supervisor or manager could do for you to help you feel, you know, to create a safe environment and really allow and maximize your ability to share? So let's go ahead and, again, pause for a minute and let you type into the chat any ideas you have about either one of these questions, whether you're a supervisor or someone that is supervised, and what can supervisors do to build engagement? Okay, so a half-day off-site meeting and talking about the work and their plan for the coming year. Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so some kind of retreat time, some thinking time together as a group to really focus.
Yeah, someone else wrote retreats as well. Yeah.
Yep. Why certain things are important and why change is necessary. Yep. Giving times at meetings for everyone to share their input. You know, revisit our psychological safety policy. Yeah, so this is really similar to Ingrid's comment, is that, you know, my answer to this question is that I am a supervisor and I'm also supervised by someone, but in one of our leadership teams, we have group norms. And so we work together to develop some expectations of each other and sort of guiding principles. And so those, I think, really did a lot for our group to build trust with each other and just, you know, you kind of know where everyone else is coming from, and then holding each other accountable to you know, hold to our guiding principles has been really a great way to help us feel, I think, closer and more cohesive as a team. Yeah, encouraging care and values and ideas, asking teachers to share their experience. Absolutely. And I think, you know, along with Susan's comment, like making sure you're recognizing the knowledge and the expertise that they bring, no matter what their role is. Go ahead, Fiona.
Someone wrote monthly lunch check-in meetings, which I think is kind of nice. It makes it a little bit more maybe of an informal setting and a time to sort of more relaxed, more kick back. And she said that she can really listen to them, or he said she could really listen to them and their dreams. Yeah, time to just be a little bit more relaxed and aspirational and open and honest, and it might really encourage some good engagement.
Nice. So good. We've got 2 more ideas relating to the human aspect of people, and then just sharing ideas regularly with others and asking for input so everybody kind of understands that shared work. Yeah, so I love Claudia's comment here. Just, I feel more comfortable being more open with my supervisor when I feel like my input is accepted, valued, and respected. The way you feel, yeah. So like, and you know that that's happening by reading physical and verbal cues and responses. So, you know, from a supervisor end, making sure that you're really paying attention to that. You know, sometimes I think about, even with my own facial expression, if I have just like if I have a slight smile on my face that's genuine, then it's more likely to help people feel like I'm warm and welcoming and kind of open to their ideas. So very important stuff. Great feedback, everybody. So let's move on to the next slide. And now we're going to think about from the team members' perspective. So if you're not a supervisor or manager, what are some things that you can do as a team member to help develop shared aspirations? Or if you are a supervisor or manager, what are some things that you would like to see from people on your team? So this is just shifting the lens a little bit differently, but, you know, thinking about, okay, so now what can people on the team do to develop shared aspirations? So just slightly different take on a similar question.
Someone wrote that they'd like to see folks taking an active role in the process. Yeah, absolutely.
Being accountable, responsible, for sure. Yep. Letting staff lead discussions. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. That's the same one I was going to say.
Oh, okay. We're aligned in our thinking again.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allowing people.
Knowledge is always great, because you know, everybody has something to bring. So let other folks lead a discussion or share from their knowledge base in some way.
Yeah. Carrie's got a great comment here too, acknowledging that all change has some loss associated with it. And so even though people might want to change, it can be hard. So being supportive, absolutely. It's a good thing to keep in mind. And, you know, in our complex environments, doing complex work, where, you know, things are always changing. So there's almost never an opportunity, or never a lacking opportunity to make that happen. Okay, staff have opportunities to share ideas with us as managers and help decide policy. Changes take time. Yep. Sharing long-term goals. Great.
Yeah, that idea of taking time is really important. I mean, we talked a few minutes ago about giving people time to even come up with ideas or contribute or share. But sometimes people need time, even outside of a meetings and away from things, to just, process information, reflect on information, adapt to changes, get ready for changes, prepare for what's coming up ahead. So really allowing that time and space and realizing that that's going to be different for everybody. Some people need more, some people need less, and some people are going to need to figure that out and process out loud, and some people are going to need time to think in their own heads and process and figure stuff out. So allowing for all that is really important. Great point.
Yeah. And just really quick before we move on from this slide, Jen put in a comment about the pluses and wishes idea from a previous webinar. And that's just the idea of getting feedback from people and that process of working reflection into your kind of everyday work. And so the pluses and minuses is a super simple idea. You just take a chart, you draw a line down the middle, and on the one side you put pluses, on the other side you put wishes. And even the word wishes helps people, it's not negative, it's not thinking of challenges or barriers, it's just wishes, and it keeps people focused on what they want to see and what they want to hear. So it's a great way to have people reflect together. And I'm a big proponent of reflecting after every, take time to reflect at the end of a meeting. How did this go for us? Reflect after events. That's how we learn. So, okay, let's go on to the next slide. And now we're just gonna really just think about, give you a minute to pause. We've just talked a lot about a lot of things on this webinar, and we're coming up kind of toward the end here. And we'd like you to just kind of think about what's something that you can commit to between now and the next webinar to in engaging your team. So anything, maybe there's something new that you heard, something new that you read on the chat, or it could be even something that you've done before that you really want to pay more attention to or do with more intentionality. And on one of our earlier webinars, we even asked for volunteers that would be willing to, go out and try what they were going to commit to, and then report back to us on how it went at the beginning of the next webinar. So here's the invitation. Just kind of think about what's something that you can commit to and what you're willing to do. And I see already some comments coming in. Committing to using reflective practice, great. Not changing so much at one time, just trying to be more systematic. Good. And if you're willing to share back with us at the next webinar and just talk about how it went, we'd love to hear that too. Yeah, so just any ideas of specific ways you might engage your team after this webinar. So I like to say, you're going back into work. After you leave this meeting, you'll be back into the workplace. So what are some things that you'd like to try? Good, really taking time to tune into the person and pay attention. That's a great one. It's so simple and can be very hard. Let's see, team meetings, taking meeting notes so that people are aware of discussions. It's really important. Yep, and a deadline date. Okay, reviewing the shared purpose. Yeah, that's great. Yep, giving people a reminder of their common goal. What else?
Someone wrote about taking meeting notes, making sure the team is aware of discussions, what action is needed, who's responsible. Again, that kind of being transparent, following up, being dependable, keeping trust going throughout. These are great points. Yeah.
I like this idea of using some brainstorming activities or what are your team aspirations? Yeah. What's our vision? What are we doing together? What's our purpose? How do we want to be together? Those are great questions. And they really, when you give people, again, time to talk in pairs or small groups before you share out in the whole group is a great way to kind of facilitate that sharing. Good, committed.
Someone's going to ask for help in planning a holiday activity. There you go.
Nice, nice. I'm on a nonprofit board, and even just, a simple idea of if you're the one that always provides the snacks at the holiday meeting, ask it, invite it to be a potluck. Why not? Why do we as the leaders always have to do everything? Invite help, ask for help. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide because I think we're coming kind of toward the end. So on this one, we just want to invite you to think about what were your aha moments? What's something new that you're taking away from this webinar? Any appreciations you have? What's your takeaway from this webinar today? So maybe a word or a short phrase, anything you appreciate or you're thinking differently about now. Good, so feeling like wanting to have a shared aspirations discussion with your team, great. Taking time to celebrate successes, nice. Asking for help and knowing we can't do it on our own. Building a more cohesive and caring team. I think for me, I just like always being like that reminder. I appreciate being reminded about the dynamics of power and paying attention to it and how my own positional power can impact how people think about me. Okay, good. So ideas supported your own. And things, yeah, and sometimes we know something, we just forget about it or we don't try it. And so yeah, it's great. This is a wonderful way to activate the collective knowledge that we all have together. Yeah.
And I love that idea though too about like good leaders ask for help. Like, and I know we often think about good leaders as being the ones who can, get out there and do everything themselves. But just like Monica said, I mean, even like, hey, let's make this a potluck. Why am I, the only one bringing the snacks? And I was thinking about a talk I recently saw, a video of Michelle Obama talking about, the work that she and the president are doing now around pulling up other leaders. It's like her saying, we can't do this by ourselves. We never did. And, and now we're trying to bring up, young leaders to follow, to champion the way for the future. And, yeah, we're not doing this alone, and none of us have to. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, that good leaders ask for help.
Yeah,
you're not in this alone.
We're making me think about, like, I think sometimes people think this leader is this person on a pedestal and they're the one that has all the answers and can get all the work done, and they're the one. And I think of it actually, for me, a leader is more like a gardener, and you're the one that's like in the fertile soil, and you're kind of like cultivating the plants and making sure everything's getting watered. And that's, for me, that's my mental model of a leader, which is funny because our graphic for the 5 Elements book is a plant. So the plant analogy. Okay, so I think we can go to the next slide and let Meredith close us out for the last couple of minutes.
Okay, Monica, Fiona, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our participants who added to the discussion by chatting with us. I am always so energized by this group. So thank you so much for joining us on a Friday. Our next one, a reminder, is January 10th, and it's about transforming organizations. So the learning objectives, we're going to review your successes in embracing and engaging your teams. I'm really excited to hear how these turn out over the next month. I have some things that I'll be trying as well. We're going to explore how to grow these successes across the organization, so outside of your team, and design experiments to try new things in the organization, no matter what your role or position is. So thank you again. I just want to remind people of Monica and Fiona's books that are available from Red Leaf Press. We're doing 20% off for participants. We are going to be sharing a recording of this on the Red Leaf Press website. So it's redleafpress.org, and then it's /webinars to find all of our recent and upcoming webinars. We have customer service available, and my email is there. If you guys have any questions, you have feedback you'd like to share with us, I'm open to that. Good, bad, all things you'd like to see. Always feel free to contact us. Also remind you that we are on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. We have a blog, so we are out there putting out content for you guys to help support you. So thank you again, and happy Friday, and we will see you all in January.
Yeah, happy Friday, happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Happy Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend.